and welcome to the Face Downs, your source for TCG news and all things Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm your host, Lucas.
I'm Ruben.
And I'm Joe.
And welcome back to another episode. How's everyone doing?
Not too bad. Just came off a huge hobby league in Palmy. We had 21 players this week. So
Oh my god, that's so amazing.
yeah, and we actually got caught off guard because we had prepared for I think it was 18 players because a couple pulled out. And round one, there was 2 games that happened on the floor because we didn't have enough tables out. So that happened. We quickly rushed the tables upstairs.
On the floor that day?
The floor decks that they were, I think it was Pendulum, Shadol, and Numeron. And I can't remember the 4th deck. But yeah, it was a good day.
I'm sure just Shadow Steve loves seeing Shadows on the floor.
Shadows on the floor, yeah. I mean,
multi being stepped on, it's okay.
See what happened? They started their game, and then I was like, okay, crap, I'm gonna go get you a table because obviously there was more people than expected. I ran the table upstairs, got 4 chairs out, and they're like, no, we're good, we're happy on the floor, and I'm like, yeah, cool, sweet, carry on then. Next round you'll be on the table. But yeah.
Yeah, that was some good old
all this double sleeving, field centers, spellground mats.
Nah, just on the floor.
That's real Yu-Gi-Oh! On the floor, no sleeves, just roaring.
Old school, it takes me back to the days of playing on the lounge floor against friends. Yeah.
Imagine if back then you were playing Shadol,
you're unsleeved as well.
Friends, and your opponents, your friends just can you stop summoning Winder?
Nah. Yeah, so we also have the.
I'm playing my Blue Eyes deck.
We've got the OTS Championship next weekend as well.
You do?
Yeah, we've got 28 people registered so far.
That's
and
amazing.
we had to open up another room as well to fit everyone in.
It doesn't sound like a ton, but considering Palmy had no Yu-Gi-Oh scene, how long ago? A few months?
4 months, yeah.
4 months ago. That's insane. 28 people who are I'm gonna pay money to lose a tournament. I'm I just want to show up and have fun.
Yeah, no, it's been good.
Awesome.
And I think as well, it's good for the population of Army too. We're seeing so many new players come out the woodwork, and it's really good to see. So yeah, so we're gonna have a lot of people building decks, getting ready for that one.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned
segue into that
building decks, because today's topic is deck building sets, the unofficial name for those products that release that sometimes have good archetypes in them. We're talking, recently Genesis Impact, Ancient Guardians, sometimes better than others, but
they're not all winners.
In our classic, oh crap, what do we talk about this week? Fashion. We thought it would actually be quite fun to go through all of the past deck building sets and run through our experiences with the best and the worst of all of those products. And of course, the first one has been in our mouths since episode 1. Of course, being the Secret Forces.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about strong archetypes, we've talked about strong boss monsters, and these are the kinds of sets where you find them.
Yeah.
This is true reinvigoration of strategies, invention of new strategies.
Generally self-contained, right?
Very much.
That's what differentiates it from a core set that'll have waves of support.
Yeah, well, you think just let's take for example Fluonderies. Okay, they kind of could have been a deck building set, but they're pulling so much from external. You look at an archetype something like Necros, which I think is the kind of poster child for deck building sets. It was kind of all in the Secret Forces, and I mean, Joe, you've spoken about it before.
Yeah.
What was your experience like with Necros? I mean, we can just kind of break down what Secret Forces had. Yeah. And why Necros was the beast that it is.
It was just so damn consistent, and that's what made Necros what it was. I remember at the time, it was the first sort of big investment I had back into Yu-Gi-Oh. Before then, I never really spent all that much. I always went for the commons and always went for this, but you didn't have a choice with Necros. You had to splash the money. I think we've spoken before about Brio being 2 per case, something along those lines, and the Trish being 1 per every 2 boxes. Same with the Valkyrie. Sorry, it's just such a powerhouse of a deck. All the cards synergize so well. It was so easy to Trish your opponent. It was so easy to just search all your combo pieces out. We hadn't seen up to that point a deck that literally had, I don't know how many searches. It had Rotor at free. It had Preparation of Rites at free. It had Assuret at free, so you would get a search off of that. You had Herald of the Arclight that sent off Kaleidoscope for another search. It had Brio that searched. It had Colossalus that searched. It had the spells that searched. Like everything in the deck searched for your combo pieces. And like, that was just something we haven't seen before. Yeah, Manju, Senju, like everything you did, just searched your
you
cards.
say it was an expensive deck, and I think a huge part in that is what you said was it was very short printed, but also it was because these deck building sets aren't just one set; they're not structure decks, right?
No.
No.
There were 3 archetypes in the Secret Forces. We're talking Necros, Ritual Beast, and Yosenju. And I actually have a lot of stories from great friend Thomas about, back in the day, because of how difficult it was to pull the Necros cards, people would just literally give away Ritual Beast and Yosenju deck bases for free. They're just like, I've got like 12 Canahawks, just take some. I'm trying to pull a Brio,
Yeah. I think there was even stories from Thomas of like, as soon as someone pulled a Brionac at Bay Dragon, Fred would discount the boxes and open a new case for the players because he knew that no one was going to buy those boxes once you'd found the Brionac, which is crazy. I mean, I think that, was it $200, $300 a Brionac at the time?
It was about $600 for a set of Brio. And then your Trish, you had to like play 2, I believe, at the time, and they were about 70 or 80 each. And then your Valkyris was the same. You'd spend a lot on those. And then Unicorn was nice and cheap. But like Brio was the thing that broke your bank account. Like that, having to buy $600 for a set of like one card. We haven't seen that for a long time since. Like we've seen expensive cards that you need to play, but like nothing like quite $600 worth to play,
There's a couple in this list, actually, I'm thinking about.
Yeah,
but we'll get to those.
I suppose, the one that I've missed. Yeah.
But what this really sets precedent for is that these deck building sets, which did contain, all of these contain generally 3 archetypes worth of support, new or old, favor one, So from your experience, obviously, you played a lot of Necros. Can you tell us about the other 2 and whether or not they lived up to any expectation or survived? What do you think about Ritual Beast and Yosenju's here?
Ritual Beast is actually a very, very good deck. The reason it didn't get to shine was because Necros was in the format, and Unicorn was a card, and Genlock was a card. The Gen thing was, in the format. So for people that don't know,
Procrastinator of Rituals, was that?
Procrastinator. Releaser,
yeah.
It's quite funny though. I quite like that.
I forget their names. They're all old.
So for people that are unaware of the lock, it used to be you would summon a Colossalus underneath the Gen releaser of Rituals, and while it was face up on the field, your opponent can special summon.
We all know Gen Lock, surely.
Yeah, so that's for the people that don't know anyway. And Ritual Beast, if they didn't have to contend with that, I believe personally they would have been right up there, because they were a deck that were very skillful to play, like the loops and getting the loops right and searching at the right time and doing all your combos in the right order was something that was quite hard. And one player that I remember doing very, very well with the deck was Naibo. Like you would like sit there watching him just like doing like Canahawk loops for like, I don't know, 15 minutes of a game, and it was just like kind of cool to watch. I'm like,
oh, that's right. This is you told the story of Max seeing yourself out with he had Manticore of Darkness loops.
Yeah, that was his a slightly different deck, but he does it's very much a Naibo deck.
This is definitely not a deck you want to take the Maxi challenge on, because you will lose.
And I think to summon.
And I think this is kind of like quite evident of how strong still not once per turn effects were. Like this is like Necros were relatively balanced by the fact that all their effects were once per turn. You could also only ritual summon using each spell once per turn.
Yeah.
Then you look at a deck like Ritual Beast, and it was just free reign. I mean, I believe you're right. Like it was the existence of Genlock and Unicorn partnered with the fact that at that time in Yu-Gi-Oh, there wasn't a lot of ways to get rid of Genlock.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. And I believe we spoke with Thomas.
Like Dark Hole
at 1, Book of Moon at 1,
I believe.
Yeah, they used to play Tackle Crusader and weird cards like that to get over. Yeah. I believe. Oh, that might be a Winter thing, but I can't remember. I just remember cards back that were not very they weren't optimal. You had to just play them because the Genlock existed, and that's why
history truly repeats itself. Tackle Crusader being played all the way back then.
Yeah, and I remember Necros back then. Like the mirror match was very skillful when Jin wasn't involved. if it was involved, it used to just be whoever genlocked the other one won. So like you often saw people siding out the gen as a gentleman agreement for game 2 and 3. But famously, Patrick Hoban had a gen in the side deck that he decided to put into the main deck for game 2 and 3 and kind of scum people out of wins. But that's a debate for like another time.
You'd
but
get them to side out as he sided it in.
Yeah, so they sided out. They sided out face up, and that's like the agreement that he would have. And then like what he would do is he would side in. Obviously, you don't get to see what your opponent sides in. He would side in another gen. So it was
right.
Yeah.
He boarded gens.
He sided boarded a gen, and it was like kind of like a bit of a scummy way to like win games. But
it's not cheating.
Hey, it's not cheating, and he did it legit. So like I guess credit to him.
Take whatever W's you can get. And Yosenju, do you have any memories of Yosenju?
Yes. So at the time in Dunedin, there was only really me and Peter that owned Necros. No one else did. They all ran Ritual Beast decks, Yosenju decks, and whatever else.
Because they were free.
Yeah, because they're free. But like Yosenju, like I'm not gonna say it was good because it wasn't. But like it was a deck where you could just run multiple floodgates and like heaps of like disrupted traps.
Right.
Like the monsters themselves don't do a lot, right? They just summon another one, search, summon another one. It's very generic. Like they don't do a lot.
3-card combo for one removal spell.
Yeah, and then they bounce everything to hand, and that's kind of their gimmick. But the thing is they could run cards like I remember at the time Mistake was kind of a thing that they would like use. They would use like anti-spell fragrance. They would just board all the stuff that would just annoyed you as a Necros player. So my memory of them was I used to just have to sideboard lots of spell and trap removal in Dunedin. But yeah, they're very much a floodgate deck.
Yeah. I think from what we've heard, Yosenju really only existed as like a rank 4 toolbox. Like, I think it was making more impact in the OCG because they still had Shockmaster for some reason. Which was just like the classic. It was just Karma 1, Karma 2, Karma 3, Shockmaster pass, which is good. Like that's not bad. But I
even
think
then, it's not even as good as Genlock, which was easier to do. Pretty much every card in the Necros deck searched.
Yeah,
it's funny hearing all these stories about these decks because they almost, thinking about the new deck building sets, we'll get to it. A lot of them seem like foreshadowing, I guess. I guess like Fluonderies we mentioned kind of has mirrors of Yosenju.
It does a bit, yeah.
Drytron later on we'll talk about has mirrors of Necros. Like they do sort of test a lot of things out in these deck building sets. They try to come up with like a
unique strategies,
a completely internally consistent sort of gimmick that is hit or miss, right? Generally they're miss, but occasionally.
Yeah, and when they hit hard.
Occasionally something hits so hard they have to like ban half of an archetype, which is very funny. That didn't happen though with the next deck building set that came out, High Speed Riders. Were you around for this, Joe?
Yes,
you were around. Okay, so you didn't quit.
So no. This one here I actually played quite a lot of. So I remember Cyframes when they came out were just a very annoying deck to play against.
Just an annoying asshole.
Like, people were like, "How do you beat this?" And then you just like you don't play anything. Just let them.
They don't even have a play. If you normally like Insect Knight, they lose the game.
Yeah, so you just don't do anything. You don't play into what they want to do. But they were very much like a pest. The one notable card we got out of it was Omega that is still around now. Like and Gamma
still.
Yeah.
Cypher, Gamma, and Omega are just staples forever.
Yes, and they never really that deck never really took off because it just was kind of just like a hand trap deck. It's like 40 hand traps and like it would summon like triple Omega and attack for game. That was kind of its gimmick. It had Zeta and some other plays, but like it wasn't great. It was like the cards that came from it were really good. Like don't get me wrong, Gamma and Omega are amazing cards. We're seeing them, and the fact that Omega's limited to 1 still because of hand loops and things like that. So I remember that being around. The other one, Speedroid, like not so much the Speedroid deck itself, but the Terratop and
this is Terratop.
The tech was it the Tectotomble?
Tectotomble.
Yeah, it really was just like staples of the set. Like none of these archetypes really performed, but
so that performed really well in Burn and Abyss.
Yeah, it sure did.
That's what made that card, and it was just like an instant rank 3. So like it became an engine that you would use within other decks, but like Speedroid themselves never really did anything.
Yeah.
And to be honest,
yeah. And
the
I think
other
we'll shout out
archetype,
the last archetype. Yeah, I mean, we're going to shout out our good friend of the Auckland community, Leighton, dedicated Red Dragon Archfiend player. Yeah, you keep dreaming.
Even he's not dedicated enough to actually play it. He just buys the cards, which I can relate to as a hero player.
Except you play the cards, yeah.
Like when they're okay. But yeah, Red Dragon Archfiend. What was even in this set that was new for the deck? I know they have
like Red Rising Dragon.
I think there was one of the synchros that was maybe used, but I like honestly don't remember.
Send an angry email to the podcast.
Yeah, do that. Send a question.
Red Dragon Archfiend.
Yeah. Oh, I think maybe Archfiend Abyss.
Oh. Motorbike.
Hello.
Motorcyclist.
I don't even know if the mics can hear that.
Yeah, so I think, it's a very stark contrast between, Secret Forces and High Speed Riders. You look at incredible out the gate deck that is so powerful. And then you look at something like High Speed Riders where it's just kind of, like you said, pieces of it.
Yeah.
It was
were
engines.
Successful.
You got engines from it. Yeah.
There's an interesting development with these deck building sets, and we're already seeing it 2 in. That because they base these decks on a core theme, they often either have 3 playable decks that are just all kind of based around some kind of value engine, or 3 decks that have a really silly gimmick that, later on they get a lot more kind of in on this idea. But certainly early on, like Psyframe, the gimmick of a hand trap dot deck, literally, is awesome until your opponent reads the cards and goes, "Oh, I'll just do this," and
I guess I'll just normal summon.
Yeah. And then you lose the game, and that's the problem with having a deck that's all in on one mechanic. Whereas at least Ritual Beast, its backup plan was just OTK. Necros was just an insane plussing engine which needed no help, and Yosenju can just do rank 4 toolbox, which was a genuinely good deck.
Massive
what do you do with
traps.
Psyframes if your opponent doesn't do anything? What do you do with Speedroids if you draw all of those bad cards and not Terratop?
Yeah,
it's a weird one. I mean, Speedroid has gotten support recently.
They've continued to get support.
That they have the most cracked slew of extenders in the entire game, despite locking you into wins, which is now an advisable typing because of Baron. So I mean, I think they could probably top something. They're in that weird realm like Virtual World where the deck's so complicated that no one wants to put the time in.
It reminds me a lot of DDDs. Very much a deck that's really explosive, great interaction, unique strategies.
But you could just play Sword Soul.
Yeah, you just have to think too hard, which, to be honest, in terms of a longevity standpoint, just isn't going to cut the mustard, unfortunately. So moving on. So from high speed to higher air, we'll be moving on to Wing Raiders. So this introduced, obviously, 3 new archetypes to the game. This was Super Quants, Phantom Knights, and Raid Raptor support. I guess this is kind of the first 2.5 kind of set.
These early ones kind of phase between duelist packs.
Yeah, because High Speed Riders, Red Dragon already exists. There was already Red Dragon Archfiend support in the game. They just kind of buffed it up. So it was similar to how they kind of buffed up Raid Raptors. I think, to be honest, immediately out of these 3, it was really Phantom Knights that stood out from this set. Notably, Ancient Cloak, Silent Boots, Fogblade, and Breaksword. These were kind of just the most incredible level 3 extenders. And this set, speaking about it with Joe, was kind of the birth of what the deck that was known as PK Fire. So Phantom Knights, Burning Abyss. Obviously, I'll let you speak a bit more on PK Fire, but I've heard about it through histories speaking.
It was just an insanely strong, rank 3 toolbox that had numerous extenders, numerous starters. It was super consistent and strong enough, and it floated, and that was massive back there because you break a board, sure, but they just have so much follow up with the Phantom Knight cards. And they also brought in things like OTK potential with the Phantom Knight, and you could also break boards because Breaksword, essentially, it was a very, very, very strong deck, and it just kind of added flavor to what Burning Abyss was, because Burning Abyss at the time hadn't gone stale, but it didn't quite have that push. Yeah,
there's been a year and a half at this point of summon Dante pass.
Yeah, Dante, then Mill, then you would go into a Virgil and spin things, but it didn't have that kind of push, and it didn't have a searchable like negate. That was huge. Like Fogblade being the card was massive back then.
Would I be right at around this time? This is where Beatrice was announced in the OCG, but it wasn't imported?
Believe so. Like I don't fully remember, like, because as I said like a few podcasts ago, I'm terrible with like dates. I it was definitely around later on with the PK build, and that like added to it even further. But yeah, I remember going to OC in 2016, and it was the triangle format of PK Fire, Cosmo, and Extra Deck Monarchs, and like PK Fire like it was like in a weird place where like it had some bad matchups, but it just because of the, I guess, the consistency level is the reason that it did so well, and this
is where like the Brilliant Fusion versus Terratop argument began.
Yes,
because like one deck was abusing Terratop, one deck was using Brilliant Fusion, and people were like, "Which one is the best?"
And one deck was abusing E-Tally.
Which card is the? We've got to ban both of them actually, apparently. But you know, which card is ban worthy? Which one is actually the problem card?
Yeah, and
is PK Fire like the last cool deck name we got? Because it's such a cool name. I'm just trying to think of other decks that had like a name that wasn't just like Invoked, Dogmatica, Shigol, Eldritch. It's just like so boring.
Yeah. The only one that I can think of in recent times is Bird Up, but I mean that's just
an Eric Andre reference that MBT started. I don't think that.
Nah, but that's what it became, you know. But like, but yeah, PK Fire that was just, it was cool. Like it was a good deck.
It's a cool last name.
Yeah,
and a cool deck.
The other one,
I think notable mentions, obviously Super Quants. We see Michael Soper down in Dunedin doing quite well with this deck. It got support in Dark Neostorm. Oh yeah, Christchurch. Apologies. It's all the South Island. No, just kidding.
Same down there.
Yeah, it's all the same.
I'll commit to that bit.
So yeah, we see Super Quants. They received support in Dark Neostorm, and I mean we all know Super Quant. I can't Magna King, Magnus, whatever.
Does your taxes.
Liger, rank 12.
It's your
Waking
dad.
the Dragon.
He's a big guy.
Yeah,
that card's cool as hell. But the deck's like more than Big Guy Turbo. It also has like a ton of all of the extra deck monsters in that deck are really good.
Yeah, Rustaliger, Grand Pulse.
They're all quick effects. Like if you play the actual Super Quants.
I think they're Super Quant material. They're quick, aren't they? Yeah.
But I think this deck got more notoriety around the time because Grand Pulse was just a generic rank 3 that popped spell traps.
Yeah.
In BA.
Yeah.
It's a cool deck.
It's a cool deck. I like. Yeah, the reason I guess Super Quants never really took off massively was because Kaijus were around as well. So like the big boss, like it was cute for game one, and then like game two it didn't really do much. But like if you weren't ready for it, then very much like a good rogue deck at the time.
I mean, you summon 2 of them, maybe.
Yeah.
The next set, Destiny Soldiers. Had you quit by now? Because this set
I was not there. Yeah, or at least I don't remember
timing.
This set is a flop. I'm so sorry to Destiny Soldiers.
Dark Lords was tier 0 and Duel Links for like a few months. So there's that. But the archetypes in this pack were Dark Lord, Abyss Actor, and Destiny Hero ? D-Hero got like 4 cards that mattered and nothing else. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, notably tied into the Arc V anime. This is when they went to the Fusion Dimension, and this is where they met Aster Phoenix.
No, I do remember the set because I remember it coming out and like being hyped on Dark Lord, and then realizing they weren't great they still weren't good. Yeah.
The thing is, it's like this isn't one that we need to talk about too much. We see Celestial, which is the notable secret rare from the set, still seeing played today.
$50.
Yep, and the Fusion Destiny Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer builds. We've seen Abyss Actor do well in New Zealand, which I don't know if that's like a good metric for success, but any success is a good success.
It's shade.
Yeah,
when the most notable,
a lot of shade.
When the most notable card out of a set is the least bad Garnet you can play as an engine piece, I don't know if that's worth talking about for very long.
Or a goth girl with wings. That's kind of.
I mean, I guess
Joe was really the only other hitter.
Pretty cute.
Yeah. So and then obviously Dark Lord had like the gimmick of like, all their spells are once per turn, but their effects make it so you can copy the effects, so you can use them twice. It's fine. I mean, Dark Lord needed more, but fairies have a chance, and dark fairies are always an interesting like environment to work around.
You see them come back a little bit with Despia, but they're not really anything. Yeah.
I was just gonna say it's fun to see going through this as a casual Duel Links fan. Every single abandoned archetype in this list has been meta in Duel Links. It's so funny because it's like the perfect breeding ground for like, oops, we put a really broken deck in this one, no one wanted to play Ritual Beast. Well, we printed in Duel Links and not Necros. Maybe people will play it. And Dark Lords, definitely Speedroids, I think at some point. Yeah, it's cool. It's neat. Abyss Act is even not too bad.
Yeah. Now moving on to a set that actually defined basically how you play field spells. And this is Fusion Enforcers. So I believe this was 2016, if my memory serves me correctly.
No way. Alice has not been around for 5 years,
I think so.
There's no way Alice has been a card for 5 years.
I think it could have been.
Live research coming to you.
Carry on talking about it.
So Fusion Enforcers 2017.
Okay, thank God.
Started 2017. So February 2017. 3 words. Normal summon Alistair.
We do be normal summoning Alistair in 2021.
Yeah, we have been and stayed being normal summoning Alistair. This, I think, speaking with a couple of players, is where field spells started getting really good. Because Meltdown was the next caliber of field spell. Like, you really... I even think, like, Clash of Rebellions is 2016 or something. Like, Chicken Game, okay, sure.
What was fieldspell.deck? We're not even going to talk about this archetype very much because it's Alistair. You know, we can talk about him a bit. But what was the fieldspell.deck? Because I know Magical Meltdown was a part of that deck.
Chicken Game, was it?
It was like Chicken Game, Meltdown.
No, 2015. Oh, it's ages ago.
It
was Chicken Game,
true.
Pseudospace, Meltdown,
Ravine, Dragon's maybe?
Ravine.
I don't even know. This deck
it was like a magical explosion kind of whatever. But yeah, this is one of the most impactfuls. We go back to short printing. I believe invocations were 2 a case.
Jesus Christ.
With Mechabas being, I think, similar to Trish and Valkyrus ratios, like 1 and 2, 1 and 3 boxes. This was very clearly, they're aware of this. And I mean, Alistair or Invoked as an archetype is just like fine wine. It's just gotten better with age. Like the introduction of, I mean, the Master Rule revision, which obviously previously it didn't have to contend with. But the introduction of link monsters, providing attributes that you didn't have access to if you were just playing normal Invoked. The Go Second, Ball Breakers, being able to Purgatrio, so powerful, combination with other really strong fusion archetypes. Because you think about it at the time, like, okay, you think Invoke Shadow is a good deck, but at the time when this set came out, our Construct was still banned. And I believe Super Poly was also still banned.
I think you played it with Wind Witches, didn't you? Like, it was like the Wind Witch.
Yes, that deck actually top 4'd Worlds that year. Wind Witch Invoked, because Crystal Wing Raijin
was pretty good.
Yeah. You should probably explain what Alistair does, I guess, to some extent, because it's extremely relevant.
A floating
this deck this deck building set had 3 archetypes: Fluffle, Predaplant, and Invoked. And there's a reason Invoked is like the one we all still play. Yeah. Because historically, Fusion was this really terrible summoning mechanic that had to be bypassed because you have to spend a card as your Fusion spell and materials from hand or field, so neg 3 generally, to summon 1 extra deck monster, which is why decks like Shadol, all their monsters float. They have a Fusion summon that uses materials from deck. Like, you just had to do everything you could to bypass actually using the Fusion mechanic. And Invoked is like the perfect example of that. Because you can normal Alistair, he searches a Fusion spell, you can banish materials from graveyard to Fusion summon, and then the Fusion spell adds back the Alistair. So it's like a completely net neutral loop that can be just put in any deck. And all of the invoked monsters having generic requirements of an attribute plus Alistair, as Ruben says, means like as we've gotten link monsters, being able to link away Alistair to the graveyard, to give you access to Fire with Olmirage,
Selene with Lights,
Secure Gardener back before Selene came out, means you can literally just put Alistair in any deck in both the TCG and Duel Links.
Yeah.
And probably win.
It's kind crazy. Of a weird engine too, because I've always heard calls to like hit the engine. Like from people, they're like, oh, I think it's more because people are just sick of it. It's not so much that it's like an ultra powerful engine, because like, yes, it is when you get it going and it doesn't get disrupted, but like a Gamma on an Alistair, if they don't have invocation, it like often ends their turn. Like there's like, it's a very, I'm not going to say weak, but I'm going to say like, it's I don't know if it's ban worthy. Like
there's a reason Alaba is now just better at Alistair.
Yeah, I also want to focus on your part of that sentence that said, if they have. That was the whole point of this deck, is because you had 3 Meltdown, 3 Alistair, generally 2 to 3 invocation. So you knew that your opponent had 6 copies of a monster and 5 copies of a spell, essentially. So if you had, it was always like the gamble. It still is the gamble.
And with Wind Witch and stuff, they had other plays that didn't involve their normal summon. So
yeah,
it could be argued that if they gamma the Alistair, you just get to play your other deck.
Yeah, because I think you made like Crystal Wing before you summoned the Alistair.
You had to
like
put the Wind Engrave to make the Raijin.
Yeah.
What's funny is I was gonna say the way you say like it's such a hard engine to ban. The best place it's been like hit is on Duel Links because they put all of the invoked cards that mattered to 3.
Or the limited 3 list.
Yeah, so in Duel Links you can only play a total of 3 cards from the limit 3 list. So they just put Alistair, Invocation, and Purgatrio to 3. So you can only play 1 Alistair, 1 Invocation, 1 Purgatrio if you want to play that engine.
Oh, I see.
And it's still tops. It's still good. But that's like the only way you can hit it, right? Is to like limit.
Yeah, it's either that or just get rid of Meltdown or something along that. I don't know. It's kind of like even then though, like it's still just a
Meltdown.
No, I don't. They don't. I don't think. But like
nuts.
But even so, like in the TCG, you get rid of Meltdown, people would probably still play free Alistair, free Invocation. Like it would.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. Like we've seen this deck do numbers, or this engine do numbers since it came out, and this is kind of where we see the deck building sets being condensed down into like a deck that's an engine. Like this is a good transition because it went from it's a whole deck of monsters to my main deck is a field spell, main deck monster, fusion spell, and then a quick play spell and a trap that you never played. So your entire deck was just your fuel. And I mean, as we said, you cook it down. It was basically 3 Terraforming, 3 Meltdown, 3 Alistair, 2 Invocation. That's 11 cards out of your 40. So you've just got 29 more slots to fill, which is incredible. Yeah, so this is, I think, where we see deck building sets start to take the engine condensing down. I mean, we can touch on the other decks here too.
I was going to say shout outs to Fluffle, they can OTK.
Yep.
And shout outs to Protoplant, a deck built around Super Poly, while Super Poly was banned.
Well, actually, I will talk about one card from Protoplant that saw a little bit of play. And that was the Scorpio and Cobra combo. Like it was like a
brilliant fusion, yeah.
Yeah, it was
Scorpio, Darling Tonia, Cobra.
Exactly, yeah. So like that was a huge like combo back then. But like apart from that, you know,
I just find it so funny. The deck is literally built around Super Poly, and it was banned. Like, what are you supposed to do?
There was no functioning, and I mean, as we saw based on the pull rates of this set, it was very much eclipsed by the invoked engine.
Oh yeah.
Moving on. So this will be 2000 and I believe like end of 2017, or maybe start of 2018. This was Spirit Warriors. So this again, we're kind of going back to the deck building section of like 2 new archetypes and then giving support to something that already existed. So we've got the introductions of the Magical Musket, or whether they're in the OCG is Magic Bullet, which is way cooler. The Weather, quote unquote, archetype, and then this was the introduction of the Secret 6 Samurais. The big standout here was Magical Muskets. This was again how we see
Zodiac.
Yeah, that was exactly what it was harkened as. It was the 1 card stick that started your entire play. I believe that received so much hype in the OCG because the concept of the muskets was really unique. They all share a really unique clause, which is a monster effect that you can play Magical Musketeer spells and traps from your hand. So that was quick plays and traps is predominantly the archetype. I believe there was continuous as well. But the concept of not setting back row, but having spell trap interruption.
Like secret hand traps, kind of.
And then they all had effects based on column placement. So if your card is activated in a column, do this. So the notable ones and the very notable short prints in the set were Caspar and Starfire. Caspar searching a Magical Musket card, and Starfire special summoning a Magical Musketeer from deck and defense position.
So similar to how Imperm now punishes you for playing into its column, this was kind of like the progenitor of that.
Absolutely.
Obviously, they can trigger themselves.
Yeah, they can trigger themselves, but you in fact played into your opponent's columns.
Yeah, you could like normal a Caspar into your opponent's set Book of Moon and be like, activate it. Like, you know, in that case it won't trigger, but you know, any other kind of like interactive spell trap, you know, you get a search off of it. I guess kind of akin to what True Draco would do later on, where you know whenever you activate something, they get something. Musket was cool. Did you play this much, Joe? Were you around, or have you just kind of brushed past the set? Because I played some Musket.
It wasn't something I really got into. I saw a few friends build it, and it was fun. But like,
it's one of those horrible decks where like you have to draw good. I don't know if you've heard of these, but like it had the obvious massive downside. I guess similar to Psyframe, where if you just drew a hand of 5 magical musket spell traps, you can't even use them if you don't control a musketeer. They are literally dead cards. So you know, sometimes you just draw really bad. They're all light fiends, so they're very hard to search in general. And it never really had the push that a deck like Zodiac, you know, which came out before this, had of like, well, every monster gets you started. Didn't quite get there, but it did top a YCS. This deck like has performed.
I mean, it's truly the explosiveness, and they've never printed it again. They've never printed like play spells from hand while you've got an X monster on field. Like they've kind of conditionally put it in. Like you think of things like Marincess Wave, where it's like you can activate it from hand if you control
like
a
one-off thing.
Yeah,
this was like a whole archetype.
It was a whole archetype based on just vomit out your hand.
It's a shame that the gimmicky ones are always the bad ones. The ones that just like plus you a card are always good. And the ones that are like, whoa, this is awesome. It's like you're role playing as a, this sucks. This deck is bad.
Yeah. I remember like Super Heavy Samurai as being one of those as well. Like just cool mechanics that don't take off. I wish they did.
Speaking of bad decks, the weather.
So this was the inverse of Musket. So their strategy relied on where you placed your spell traps, and it flickered basically like it would banish monsters and then return them to the field. Is like the whole premise of the archetype.
It's like a strike ninja archetype.
Very much that. It never had success. It's too slow. You rely too much on your spell traps, which, to be honest, is probably worse than relying on monster effects because spell trap removal is so prevalent.
This deck is very pretty, but it can suck it. I hate this deck. It literally just it exists to lose the game as slow as possible. That's like the whole point of this deck. Maybe if they could turbo their Link monster better, it would be decent. Because the Link monster is like not once per turn Solemn Judgment, but it's not really there.
Yeah. And then Secret Six Samurai, this never really like Six Samurai already have like the crutch of not having multiple gateway. And at this time also you didn't have their Link monster that searched gateway. So it wasn't really like crazy. I think like it was just more like warrior extender at this point, unfortunately. I'm not a Secret Six Samurai expert.
You're not an expert on Secret Six Samurai?
Not Secret Six Samurai.
They're interesting because they were tuner extenders the deck never really had.
Of course, for Shein.
Exactly. And they offered protection in the graveyard and a fusion monster no one ever made. I think someone can write in angrily if it's their favorite boss monster of all time. I'm sorry. You don't even play it in Duel Links.
Yeah.
Neat set. The next one I think we'll talk about for a minute as well. Was Dark Saviors. Joe, were you around for this one?
I caught it after it was printed, so like I was in
You felt the aftermath.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't there when it first got
Dark
printed.
Saviors trailed on long enough.
Yeah. So this was kind of. I think they might have seen the lack of success that a lot of the other deck strategies have had in the past. Like you comb through the success of Necros. And as we've done throughout this podcast so far, we've kind of picked out the pieces that have been the most successful.
There haven't been that many like tier 1 decks out of the gate from these
decks.
sets.
Like the closest we got was probably like Invoked, but again, that's like an engine, not a deck. Here we've got a pretty great deck. Now, I want to preface this. Yeah. I watched a SEMO video discussing this is Sky Striker.
Oh, I thought you were talking about vampires.
Vampires, best deck.
Caught me off guard.
Yeah. So SEMO very hilariously, and I believe also MBT, made a preview video on this archetype and said, it's cute, it's not going to do much.
Did they really?
Yes.
That's so
You can
funny.
Absolutely YouTube these, and I believe it is like the bane of their existence.
Name a more iconic combo than SEMO and underrepresenting a deck building archetype.
Yeah. So Sky Striker. This was, again, a unique strategy. So Sky Striker revolves around your ace monster, Ray. And your Sky Striker spells. Now, the gimmick of this deck is that all their spells have really powerful effects, but you mustn't control any monsters in your main monster zone.
It's like Infernity.
It's like a weird Infernity lock-ish, but obviously utilizing the new introduction of Link monsters, as they want you to, utilize the extra monster zone for your Link monsters. There are some pretty good cards in the deck.
A couple ones I can think
couple of ones that I can think of the top of my head. So the most notable, and probably the one that still brings a lot of salt to people's wounds, would be Sky Striker Mobilize Engage.
Yep.
You just say the word engage, and I think that brings a lot of...
You played against Sky Striker recently, right, Joe?
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like back then it was engage. Yep. Like it was the joke, like you just engage 20 times in a turn and it just hurt. Yeah.
So engage, for those who don't know, is a normal spell that simply says add one Sky Striker card from deck to hand, except itself. Then if you control 3 or more spells in your grave, draw a card. It's missing a pretty important clause that would be use once per turn, I would say.
No once per turn on this card.
No once per turn in the archetype, basically.
That's true.
A lot of their spells... So the gimmick of the deck was no main monsters and utilization of spells in grave. Your extra deck monsters like Kagari, which on Link Summon added back a Sky Striker spell from grave to hand, gained attack for every Sky Striker spell in grave, and Shizuku, your other Link monster, was printed in this set at the time. Your opponents lost attack and defense times 100 for each spell in grave. They knew damn well this deck was going to be good, because you know what else was printed in this set? Toon Table of Contents.
I thought you were going to say that they printed 1 engage a case.
That was also the case. So
this is the return of the $200 card, and funny, it's the Searcher. Crazy.
Yeah,
it's almost like they know.
Yep.
It's almost like they know your entire deck revolves around finding your pieces.
From Brio to this, it's the same shit over and over again.
Yeah.
But a good ass deck, and I mean, this deck was meta for like 2 years. It's still probably tiered, I'd say.
I would agree.
Yeah. But I'm in like tier 3, but it's still good. Like.
Where do we put it on our tier list? I think
tier
Rogue.
3, yeah.
Tier 3 Rogue.
But it has like
Rogue,
50,000 cards on the ban list. Like, sure, it's got Engage at 1. They've unlimited a few things over the years, but they've still got Multi-Roll at 1, Hornet Drones at 1, tentatively a few cards that could go if, say, they brought Engage to 2. Kagari used to be at 1. Widow Anchor used to be at 1. The list goes on.
It's very much like one of those decks, though, where the experienced Sky Striker players is like watching them play with it is like it's almost like an art form, the way they play with it, like the way that they loop that 1 engage and like keep their resources just in it, like control the game. It is very much like if you're a really, really good player, it's a deck for you. Like it definitely like does get your brain ticking, and
absolutely.
It also punishes you big time for misplaying. So it's a very skillful deck. Yeah,
I would agree. I think it truly. I mean, it was the cover card of the set. That's no lie. And I think that Dark Saviors, or I think Sky Striker, like really introduced this concept of like we're back to getting a whole deck from a deck building set. Like they printed all your spells that you needed in there that were supers or secrets. Obviously, we didn't mention that before, but that's all the rarities that were in the deck building sets. And this is, I think, potentially... I know that some of these throughout history have received support in core sets, but this was kind of like the first one that you were just kind of waiting to see what they kind of filled the hole with. And I mean, throughout history, or throughout the set's release after Dark Saviors, we saw, the introduction of Hayate and Kaina, even Zeka, and even now we're still expecting new Sky Striker cards coming from the OCG. So it's very evident that they're aware of this deck. They're aware that it's a fan favorite. Because I mean, we can all hate Sky Striker as much as we please, but it's something that people just keep talking about. Like
it's almost got like a cult following.
Oh yeah, there are some photos on the internet that can't see the light of day. And I think that this is a deck that truly exemplifies...
I pull up that photo in the video.
Please don't pull up that photo in the video. We will actually get demonetized.
I'll blur it.
Off YouTube.
I'll blur it.
And,
I'll ask Thomas.
Yeah. So I think this is a deck that exemplifies resilience because even through every single hit, it survived until Engage went.
Yeah.
And even now back, it's still potential. Like you said, it's tiered.
It's tiered, yeah.
People were still holding on to it before that as well. Like when Engage went to none, like people still tried to play it. Like,
oh yeah,
yes,
they topped with it, buddy.
Yeah,
Ryan, you topped with no Engage.
And Elise, Elise in America, she also topped with it.
Yeah, 2 people topped with this deck on just Mystic Mine Turbo, and this is also one of the first decks that kind of really, I think, brought Mystic Mine into like the meta limelight, and then Prank Kids sort of took the reins afterwards. As a deck, because it only needs to summon 1 monster, can kind of just do its entire game plan without like having to even out their own Mystic Mine. So, you know, that's a relevant part of this deck as well.
Absolutely.
And the last thing about this deck that was relevant was also how splashable it was.
Yes.
Necroz was an amazing deck with all of the same kind of hallmarks as this, you know, easy search power, you know, recovery, strong plays. But the reason Striker was so good is all of the restrictions were just you can't have any main monster zone monsters, which, you know, is funny. If you start with Striker spells, that doesn't matter.
That's not a restriction.
So you could just play Engage at 3 in any deck, and at worst, it was just a way to get like a free body on the field with Hornet drones.
Yeah.
But at best, it also drew you a card, and you were like, well, you know, I guess I'll Pot of Greed. Why not? Vampire and Fur Hire, these decks sucked. I mean, Fur Hire is kind of cute. Vampire is getting support. I mean, what
not really much of a talking point there. Yeah.
Vampire got their best cards outside of this set, even. Vampire Sucker being played in like some zombie lists.
Vampire Sucker is Planes of Destruction.
I said, yeah, outside of this set.
Yeah.
This had Fraulein and a couple of vampire support
Retainer, etc. Domain.
Yeah.
And then Fur Hire, again, cool name taken away. It was Skyfang Brigade in the OCG.
Yeah. I mean, and fun fact, Fur Hire is still the longest tiered tier 0 deck in Duel Links. Fur Hire was literally like 100 times better than the other decks in the format when it came out, to the point that they had to like ban half the archetype. Just a fun
crazy
fact.
how different how games are, you know.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out if you don't print the other 2 archetypes in this set, Fur Hire looks pretty good.
Yeah.
It's actually a pretty sick
They look
deck.
great in a vacuum, but in comparison, not so much.
And again, continuing the theme of like one really powerful deck that still sees meta play and can play Mystic Mine, Hidden Summoners.
Yeah, Mayakashi, the deck.
Yes, sorry. Of course, it's Neptus.
Yeah, it's Neptus. So this is the introduction of Prank Kids. Our favorite tier 3 deck, did we say? No, tier 2. Was it tier 2?
I said it was tier 1.
Oh,
Connor, you can't even come for me.
Yeah, tier 2, our favorite tier 2 deck. This is incredible. This is, I mean, we've seen Zodiac as one card starter. It didn't. It didn't suck, and then Nibiru came out, and then it sucked, and then Meow Meow came out, and then it didn't suck anymore.
I think Prank Kids without an easy 1-card engine is kind of ass.
But the thing is that when Prank Kids
won
came
a
out
YCS,
in a set, it did win a YCS, and the thing is, when Prank Kids were around, they had 3 instant fusion.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I forget a lot of the things they had.
Yeah.
Because in my head, I'm just like, how do you get your play started when you have to like open fusion spell to Prank Kids? But I guess yeah, the deck had enough searchability, 3 instant fusion. I can actually see that being nuts.
So Prank Kids are there's an archetype of monsters that if they're sent to grave for material as a fusion or link summon of a Prank Kids monster, they have a first effect that burns, gains, sends, draws.
Just does something small.
And then special summons a Prank Kid other than the one that was used. And they're all once per turn.
So on the endless conga line of fusion decks that try to cheat fusion summoning.
Well, it's mitigating resource loss. And this is, I think, where, you know, this was kind of potentially what they tried to do with Hidden Summoners. As you look at the deck, like the deck building sets, like Prank Kids is fusion and links. So they wanted to make sure that you're not losing materials. Mayakashi was synchro, and Daki, which is the level 2, always came back if a Mayakashi was summoned. So you just synchro climbed to no end until you got to Goshudokuro, which is the big like level 10 skeletal Mayakashi. And then Neptus was all about destroying monsters to ritual summon. This deck used pre-prep, which was, you know, one of the most broken ritual search spells in the game.
They played Big Chicken.
Yeah, Big Chicken, Big Burning Chicken, and Kentucky Fried Chicken. But yeah, really the standout from this set was Prank Kids. It is still relevant today at tier 2. That's TWO, tier 2.
Bottom end tier 2.
Bottom end, yeah. I mean, you know, they lose to DPE. How can you possibly play?
So this deck, obviously, as we said, saw success. It won a YCS with the, you know, inclusion of 3 instant fusion. The introduction of Nibiru basically killed this entire deck building set. There's all of them summon more than 5 times, so like good luck.
And Sky Striker didn't.
Yeah, and Sky Striker did not. And then the introduction of Prank Kid's Meow Meow Moo and Phantom Rage just whiplashed this deck back into relevance.
It was like top of tier 1, I think.
Yeah, because the deck was just missing a 1-card starter, and there it was.
Which is funny, we don't talk about it, I guess, talking about all these historically, but a lot of these decks did get insane support. Like Magical Muskets got access to a Link 1 that could just +5.
In either regard, yeah.
Predaplant gave us a Verte Anaconda, which, isn't usually played in Predaplants, but is like an insane individual card.
Fluffles, Edgent Patchwork, or Fright for Patchwork.
Fright for Patchwork for Fluffles. Like, a lot of these decks did get really gas upgrades. The problem being, of course, they came too late, because they weren't out of the box playable. It was almost like they were out of the meta just in time to get their meta card. But Prank Kids was an example of a deck that did completely die. And then their card was just so busted that, it solved the entire deck's problem.
Or straight back in, yeah.
Actual new Zodiac.
Yeah.
Kind of.
And this is something we touched on, like archetypes, is it's tough. Like, you want to know, like, at what point does, what support helps bring a deck new life. And Meow Meow Moo is one of the best examples of legacy support for a deck, because it just fixed every box. It gave you your resources. It has an incredible grave effect or on-field effect, as I saw in the Remote to YCS. And it just, it facilitated so much, which is, I think, the perfect, exemplifies a really good strategy that just had a gap, and Konami knew how to fill it perfectly, almost, again, too well. Yeah. So after a couple of banger deck building sets, we do move on to maybe a couple of the duds.
We still have this one in stock at store. At my store.
So this is Infinity Chasers. This
one's bad.
This is not good. I'm very sorry.
Joe, did you play this one? Were you around for this one? I have to keep asking you that because
I mean, if I was, like, even if I was, it was so unmemorable that I don't even know. Like I remember seeing some of the art types from it, and they just don't really do much. I think really the only notable one here was Infinitrack. Earth Machine kind of progressed itself forward. And I mean,
Megaclops saw a lot of play, actually.
Megaclops did see a lot of play
in Zodiac format, but again, not in Infinitrack decks.
Yeah, it's it was Anchor Drill, Trencher, and then Harvester were kind of your bigger plays.
I'd make the case that Evil Eye was underplayed when it came out. And maybe
it's too complex. I
think I'm forgetting what the format was when this was out. It was probably peak toss.
It is peak toss format.
Sky Striker August. So I understand why it didn't top. But Evil Eye is genuinely really good, and no one has ever read the cards, which helps. It's basically impossible to out their equip spell lock, and they have cards that kind of do this non-targeting banish when they battle you, and you don't take battle damage. You can't be destroyed by battle. So it's this kind of control deck that can just eke out all of your resources and banish everything out of your graveyard. But it does take a little bit too long to get started, I think, is potentially the issue.
Yeah, and so I think that's
do you think it's one of those decks where one card could come out to bust it though?
No, it's unfortunately too fair. But I mean, Serziel is an insane Yu-Gi-Oh card. You gotta read that guy.
Yeah.
He's just crazy. And then Witchcraft.
I think it carries the same sentiment as Evil Eye.
Ruben had a stint with this deck.
Yeah, I mean, Madame Verse and Creations were the short prints of the set, so love that. Again, it's cute art. They got some really nice legacy support in Ignition Assault and Eternity Code. They're again just like my Akashi and Sky Striker, expected to be seeing support in the OCG. I mean, the problem is the deck is inherently neg ones. It's tribute a monster, discard a spell, special summon one from deck. So you've 2-for-1'd yourself, which hurts like hell when you get ashed. And you saw some cute plays with Spell Chronicle, Witchcrafter Patronus, get 6 spells back from your banish zone, but it wasn't really a.
It's they learned their lesson from Prank Kids and Sky Strikers that by trying to compensate for poor summoning mechanics, you can maybe sometimes overcorrect and print a deck that is just too free.
Yeah, and the thing is the Witchcrafter spells are amazing because they also at end step add back from grave to hand, but they're all Shadow Mist claws. You can either use the first effect to maybe search or reborn or protect your things, or add back from grave. You couldn't do both, and that's I think where
what you see here is again some undersupported ideas, being machines being main deck boss monsters and equip spells all being kind of pushed. Unfortunately, none of those are quite as good as
Thunder Dragon
reinforcement of the army with upside. But yeah, I think these decks were pretty neat. It's a shame like none of them got broken support fast enough to make them meta, because this is truly one of the big flop deck building sets. The next one is also a flop, but it's an interesting flop. Mystic Fighters was, I think, the first one we really like watched come out live, and we experienced, because these deck building sets always have a lot of hype.
Yes.
There's always a lot of discussion about whether or not the decks are broken, whether or not the decks are going to be meta, or if they're trash. And I remember this was the first one we were playing where we probably fell a little bit into the hype, or just we're kind of like keeping up with the news cycle and going like, oh wow, look at this cool new thing. But this was Dragon Maid, Generator, and Math Mech, one of these decks being very close to my heart. And no, it's not Dragon Maid.
That's an Pat's job.
Oh Jesus. But these were, again, all interesting decks. Don't have to dwell on them too much because they all kind of only introduced a couple cards. Dragon Maid introduced Chamber. No, not Chamber. It introduced
actually Hospitality.
Nothing.
Hospitality.
Yeah, actually this deck introduced nothing. Forget I said anything. Chamber is the only good one.
Which came later.
Yeah. Hospitality's like fine. Generator introduced the field spell, and then a bunch of garnets you have to run to make the field spell good.
Really, it was only Mardell, but for future potential.
Mardell might actually be broken, but Generator sucks, unfortunately. And then Math Mech gave us the king of all FTKs, Math Mech Alum version, which can just search any spell card if you give it 4 materials, which is kind of only possible in like Table 500 replays. And also a couple of like Cybers extenders. But I think we got burned on this one. This one was like really bad. Do you guys have any stories about Mystic Fighters that you'd like to tell?
I wasn't around.
It's really only like Final Sigma was like the only thing that's kind of
Sigma grind,
time.
Sigma grind set. Kind of sick.
Yeah. And then I think we slingshot to a kind of like the close on their previous approach to deck building sets, which is Secret Slayers.
And boy, what a finale. Talk about $200 cards.
Yeah. So we're just going to skip over the first one because the second and third archetypes we can very much talk about.
Rika sucks. Moving on.
Yeah, Rika sucks. Lovely plants. Oops, plants got broken in the past multiple times. We can't have them be too good.
What if you wanted to sleep with Gub?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the theme.
Yeah. The archetype's cool. The boss monster just targets, which is a huge problem. Sorry, Teardrop. But we're really here to talk about Adamancipator and Eldritch. These are two decks that are both close to Lucas and my own hearts. This set was really interesting because for us in New Zealand, it came out during our first lockdown in level 4 of 2020. So we had nothing to base our builds off of. There was no competitive events going on. There was nothing that was, doing well. All we had was OCG, and the OCG saw a lot of success with Eldritch as like a back row control style. But even then that was tough because OCG have Vanity's Emptiness. They have 3 skill drain. There's so much that OCG have that we just don't. But I think the hidden gem, quote unquote, of the deck building set was Adamancipators. And just like Sky Strikers, they knew that this deck was going to be good. This was a total out of the blue success in the TCG, like beyond anyone's expectations. And it was simply because OCG have Maxi, so it wasn't going to succeed in a combo. A combo deck wasn't going to succeed in a Maxi format. But turns out when your format doesn't have Maxi, it does pretty well, wouldn't you say, Lucas?
Yeah, I mean, Maxi is to the OCG what Nibiru is to us. The key difference being you can only Nibiru on the 5th summon. You can Maxi on the 1st summon. And why that mattered was because Adamancipator could easily cheat out Kawakimiru Guardian on the 2nd summon, putting out a monster negate and then just basically being able to do whatever they want. Free reign. It was so bad that literally you couldn't play hand traps because if you played any hand traps, nothing hit Adamancipator. So you had to main deck cards like Dark Ruler No More, Nibiru. If you were lucky, maybe you could get off a Nibiru. But this was definitely like a defining moment because these two decks, we went from like a kind of like cute Spiral, Shadol, Hero, some Orcus
Live
decks.
rank 4.
Yeah, some rank 4 turbo decks. Into like, if you're not playing these two decks, you're not playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Very much felt that way.
It kind of did feel like tier 0.5e. Like
Yeah.
it did kind of, it was like very much like indicative of like Spellbook and Dragon Rulers. Like you either played the board builder or the back row builder. And if you didn't, you lost.
Much to tie it in with like Necros, you know, this finale of kind of decks introduced some incredibly broken decks that kind of were tier 1, tier 0, whatever you want to describe it as, each containing several $100 short printed cards and a bunch of free Rika bases going around. It was an interesting time to play Yu-Gi-Oh! For sure. Joe, you were still not playing Yu-Gi-Oh?
I wasn't, but
yeah, you were watching with interest, perhaps.
I honestly, I only found out about Eldritch like, you know, the Dunedin tournament. That was the first time I'd ever played against Eldritch. So it took me a while to even like, yeah.
What?
Yeah. So like, cause I came back in what, geez, when it would have been not even a year ago. I think I might have only just started picking up the game like last year, and then like no one in Palmy had Eldritch, so like I just never got to play against it. So I was like, I'll find out what it does when I get there. And then when I got down to Dunedin, it was the first time I'd ever played against Eldritch. It kind of blew my mind with like how it functioned, like, and it's something that like still is relevant today with how like just grindy that engine is, and how it just constantly gets its resources back, and the fact that it's a unique build where it all functions around the one card. Like you've probably seen a couple of decks that function around a single card, like Ray, but like this one in particular, just like it's all built around Golden Lord, right? Like
yes.
you can literally main deck 3 Golden Lord and no other monsters in that deck, and that's it. Like, and we haven't seen that much before. But I think it's a really cool deck, and I feel like it's something that we're going to probably see come back into our format now as well. And it's a deck that you'll see come back in slower formats, you know, because it's a trap deck.
I mean, it's notable. It's like a trap deck that if you Lightning Storm it, it can recover. I think that was like a really big deal with this deck, because there are a lot of good trap decks in the format that are way, way better than Eldritch, but they're high roll. You know, if you get blown out by like a Harpy's Feather Duster, it's the end of the game. Whereas Eldritch, you just like wipe their back row, they're like, it's coming back, you know? As long as
we'll just be resetting
if you can't kill me, I'll just get it all back, and my guy's huge and you can't destroy him, and he's hot as hell. Look at him. Pull up the picture of him sitting in that chair, you know?
Yeah, Lord of the Heavenly Prison, is it? Is that the name of the card? That card's
the new one from Burst of Destiny.
Not to mention it's a level 10 as well.
Do you even need to play that in Eldritch? Because like, you really don't care if your stuff gets blown up.
I guess Floodgates, but then, I mean, it doesn't work with face up, so yeah.
But this marked the end of
the super and secret.
Yeah, the classic deck building set that was like super and secret. You know, kind of like lots of reprints in foil, and I guess they kind of did away with like the genericness of some of these sets, because looking at the next 3, they kind of did away with you know, what you could describe as like kind of engines. One deck in particular, maybe of note, exception to that. But yeah, definitely this was the last time like 2 decks came out, and it was just unquestionable. Like, these are the best decks. Like, just go play them. They're like $4,000. Also, you have to buy like $1,000 of staples. Let's keep in mind too that Eldritch was not a particularly strong deck until you put like another broken engine into it at this time. It would not have competed at all with Adamancipator if it were not for the Synchro or Invoked packages people put into it.
And those were already expensive, because obviously Invoked had just seen success in Shadol, and Synchro, once that ticked off, everything in that engine went up, because this was obviously Halka Fibrax had just come out.
This was like $400 Invoked package era Invoked, and you played Invoked, right?
Yeah, I loved it, every second of it. Caliga was so strong, loved every second. I just think that like I loved the utility that extra deck gave you. Rank 5 for Pleiades.
You had like 15 slots you could just put in for tech cards.
Induct to get rid of problematic like link monsters. Like I had Pleiades. I think I obviously Gustav Max. Like there was just so much in the deck that just served so much purpose and unique utility. Mechaba, Caliga, Purgatrio. I was playing Souls at the time as well, because I needed the link material.
There's a fun theoretical world in which Adamancipator never came out, and the Synchro Auroradon stuff never happened, and Eldritch just existed as this really fun value engine deck that competed with like, I don't know, like the kind of watered down Toss decks and Shaddoll and stuff like that. It's just so funny to look back on it now. That it's just like, what was the best Eldritch version? Oh, the version that played like no Eldritch cards. It was like 3 tuning, 3 jet synchron, like
Despot.
a billion free normal summon, special summon extenders, and then I don't know, a few Eldritch trap cards. Why not?
So then, with new era of deck building sets, so we've moved away, like we said, from supers and secrets to we now have rares because they've just been taken out of core sets, as well as supers and ultras, and the introduction of the OCG exclusive rarity collectors rares.
Bad ulties.
Bad ulties. Are they pretty though? Absolutely. So we have the first one. So this was end of December. This was December 2020. This was Genesis Impact. So this was kind of on the cusp of the new year. People were interested to see what they were maybe thinking as the vibe for going forward. Obviously, we saw really strong decks in the Nadir Servant stuff from Rise of the Duelist, the Virtual World strategy from Phantom Rage. And so this was the last set of the year. So this introduced 3 archetypes. This was the Magistus, the Evil Twin, and Drytron. And I think, obviously, I believe we've spoken about it before. Drytron is really the standout here on initial release. And it wasn't it was kind of spoken about as a good engine, but it wasn't really solidified until it started seeing competitive success. Obviously, within the set as well, we saw the printing of Cyber Angel Benten, which is obviously a very problematic fairy card with no once per turn restrictions on it. And we saw how this kind of shook up the ritual game. Much like Necros introduced a self-sustaining engine, Drytron made ritual summoning no longer a negative in resources, which I think is huge. The ritual spell being able to use attack as opposed to levels is just insane, because it meant that your ritual summons were generally 1-for-1, and the ritual spell can add itself back from grave, which is amazing. This is you can
even have monsters on the field when you do that.
Exactly. You can almost parallel it to how the Necros spells would, if you controlled no monsters, would banish to search a Necros spell. But this is kind of where combo ritual kind of took off.
Yeah, and I think in that first wave, obviously the deck was just kind of Ben 10 Turbo.
Yes.
It didn't. I mean, it did a lot, but it was only because you had triple Ben 10. Once it took the hit, we saw it obviously dip down, and then when Diviner came out, we saw it rise again.
Diviner and Beta.
Yeah, exactly. Those 2 cards were insane, and this is another example as well of these deck building sets being built upon in core sets as well. And I feel Drytron, it kind of broke the mechanic of ritual summoning, even further than what Necros had done. Necros, all it did was make your searching for your pieces a lot easier. This literally changed the way the summoning mechanic worked. So yeah, that stood out to me when I saw it. It's the one deck that I wish I'd bought. I'd only just come back to the
bands,
Yeah, I know. I got back into the game at this point. Genesis Impact had just came out. I'd seen Drytron. I didn't want to invest because I'd only just come back. And then again, I keep coming around to wanting to buy it, and then it never happens. But it does give me Necros vibes, and I feel like it is something that we might see as an engine continue on even after the Drytron deck as such gets taken away. Yeah.
The only thing that maybe kills the Necros vibes is the fact that you don't really play the Drytron ritual monsters. This is kind of just pull the mask off Scooby-Doo Dark Warrior or any kind of just link spam deck, but ritual spam. You end up just using the ritual monsters you summon as material to just extend and then summon one generic boss monster and pass.
Yeah.
It lacks a little bit of the quality of ritual monster kind of flavor, I guess.
Yeah.
Because of the way that it just kind of abuses all the fairy support and not its own cards.
Yeah.
I definitely think I could see them printing more Drytron ritual monsters to maybe
that'd be cool.
Compensate for that, because that would be much more interesting. Maybe more interesting than the Asarctic crossover from the next set. The other decks from this set, Evil Twin has been a fan favorite, has yet to properly convert, have received 12 billion waves of support.
Literally a new piece of support since release.
They were the 1-card engine deck of this deck building set, and they're pretty good at it.
Agreed.
They just kind of lack like a huge ceiling. They have like an incredible value engine where they can reborn each other from the graveyard to either draw a card or destroy a card on the field, both of which are really good effects. But of course, if your opponent manages to play through it, you often just get killed. Is what can happen. And then Magistus,
yeah, like it's one of those ones
Moving
where they
on.
tried. I'll talk about it briefly. Like it's one of those ones that
you
tried.
like Magistus, right?
I have a soft spot for them, but it's one of those ones where they tried to like innovate a new kind of way a deck played, and it didn't come off that well. Like, you know, there were I mean, I know that there's been monsters that equip like Inzectors and stuff before, but like this was like you utilize your extra deck as an equip kind of spell. It was cool, but like it just didn't do enough, and it was
They
too
forgot
fair.
to print good effects on them.
Yeah, on that note, can someone please sell me 3 Inzector Hornet first edition Supers Europrint? This is a call out. I really would like them to play because equipping is incredible. And Magistus, unfortunately, it was too much of a neg.
Yeah. Well, the problem is they just didn't print anything stupid about it. Like,
no.
Where was the Magistus card that says like, equip this card from extra deck to this monster, draw a card, the equipped monster, you know, you contribute it to summon another one. Like, they never gave it that kind of payoff that maybe Inzector demonstrated with its kind of, you know, insane loops. And maybe that was a preventative. We don't want to print Inzectors, but from the extra deck. But they could have given it a little more oomph.
They gave us the Artemis, which is like used as a link 1 in other decks, like, and that's about it.
The best card is used in other decks.
They have a good boss monster now. It's just as a shame. Again, it came out too late. The deck isn't very good at supporting its own boss monster.
And not to mention, it was just too fair. It locked you into Magistus, and that's what made it like,
That's true.
Anyway,
it does.
And then moving on to the next ones, which I think kind of too fair kind of describes.
This might be the worst deck building set of all time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to maybe put that one out there. Ancient Guardians, it is unsellable at work. I don't know anyone who wants to open it. That like the only good card from this set is Pancratops at Collector's Rare. Like
Skullmeister.
Yeah, like there's nothing in this set particularly worth talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think Joe summed it up perfectly. These archetypes are just too fair. Like, there's nothing broken about them. Like, they all have that one super rare spell that's really powerful, but like that's kind of it.
The decks are Asarctic, Ogdo Abyss, and Sulfur Cord.
So a weird like dark synchro feud like strategy, reptiles, and pendulum.
Yeah. Pendulum's interesting because this is the first like pendulum deck building set deck.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people have it's not confirmed, but a lot of people have the assumption that Konami have a pretty bitter taste of pendulum in their mouth, so that's something they kind of avoid supporting.
Oh, Abyss Actus. Sorry, I forgot about Abyss Actus.
I mean, you're right there, but like again, like that was at a weird time, so it's like you see, after Sulfur, after the aftermath of Pepe, they haven't really tried to make any pendulum strategy good because it just was too good. It's tough. Really, it is 2 words, too fair. And they've all gotten, they're all getting support or have gotten support. It's just whether or not that converts it.
It's also called might easily play in a future pendulum build. But that's about it. Asarctic is god awful.
Put these decks up against any of the current meta, they just don't do enough.
So, can't hold a candle.
Asarctic's getting Card of Safe Return, and I think that still won't work. I think it'll still be bad, which is crazy. And then moving on to the last one, unreleased at this current moment, we're very familiar with what it's going to do.
Yeah, so this comes out in January. This is the Grand Creators. So this is 3 new strategies, obviously. Surprise, we've all talked about 3 new strategies. This includes the Punk archetype, the Exorcister archetype, and the Brave Token archetype. I think
is it even called the Brave Token? It's called like Token.
Final Fantasy, but can't call it that.
Online deck. Yeah.
So really, the notable one here is Brave Token, and I think unfortunately this suffers the invoked formula.
It's hilarious because the deck sucks so bad.
But the engine is incredible.
They just accidentally printed a free Omni Negate for any deck in it.
That doesn't use normal summon effects.
Yeah. It's silly. It's like an equip spell, like 3 main deck monsters strategy. But of course, the OCG quickly picked up. There's a card that you can basically for free discard or banish from somewhere to get the continuous spell, which gets Griffin Rider, which you can then summon for free because you control a Brave token, which is just an Omni Negate.
It's kind of you can search for the equip spell, which is a bounce, and yeah. So the thing is, Brave token is seeing a lot of success in Phantom Knight in the OCG, and that's because the main play Aquamancer of the Sanctuary is a level 3, so it's a Cherubini target. Not to mention that deck very freely doesn't have to use its normal summon effects. It just uses level 3 extenders to achieve a Cherubini. And you can do that all under 5 summons, all under interruption, which is what your Wandering Griffin Rider essentially provides. Unfortunately, this suffers the invoked fate of your deck's cool and it's a unique strategy, but wow, are your pieces really good in
other decks,
in singularity.
Punk is also a neat one. It's like a synchro psychic strategy, so of course similar to VDub. Less native extenders, but it does have like a cool Mistworm boss monster that might see play in its own deck. Obviously, it's not splashable. And then Exorcister is like the magical musket of this set. It's a super cool deck that like pluses off your opponent, banishing from their own graveyard.
No, moving from grave.
Moving from grave. So they get very annoyed when you mess with dead bodies. But it has that Psyframe issue where like if your opponent just realizes, oh, if I don't banish or move from grave, your deck does nothing, and you go, yeah, pretty much. Yeah. It's neat. But we're definitely going to see like a $200 Aquamancer playset from this, and probably not a lot else. And that wraps it up. That's every deck building set. In the course of what I hope was an hour. I don't know how long this was.
Just over an hour. Yeah.
Okay. But we do have some questions. Time for some viewer feedback. And Ruben, do you have a name in mind? We have a viewer submitted name. Would you like me to read that first?
Oh yeah. So you can read obviously Marshall, great listener.
Yeah, Marshall, great listener, has an email here just titled Q&A section should be called The Face Downs Face Up. That's it. That's the email.
Okay. Yeah. We'll take that on board.
For me, I liked the I was thinking about it at work today. I was thinking I'd like to call our question and answer segment The Flip Side.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, Marshall.
I got a cooler response. Yeah.
And your deck sucks.
Yeah. And ABC's trash.
Whoa.
We're gonna move into I think our newly named section. Thank you, Marshall, for your feedback. We're always thankful for anyone that contacts us. So we're gonna move into our segment called The Flip Side. This is a little segment where we like to take viewer submitted questions and queries and give them a little answer and have a little discussion at the end of our episodes. I think you want to start. There's a really incredible comment we've got here from YouTube.
So Capano, one of our greatest fans, he always posts the most positive, uplifting comments. Did have an interesting question on our tier list podcast, because we actually failed to mention any of the predominant Go Second decks of the format. Because I know he's renowned for his kind of Capano special, the Mech Knight Orcust, sometimes invoked, sometimes Shadol deck that generally wins or comes top 2 at a shuffle hobby. And he said, today as I was watching and listening, I noticed that there wasn't any going second strategies represented on the tier list. So my question is, what are your guys' personal thoughts on competitive going second strategies, and are they any good this format? Also, do you think they would ever place on the tier 2 list?
Is it tier 2 because it's going second? Yeah.
Tier 2 because I lose to it sometimes. Yeah. Definitely lose to Capano.
I think we've seen really strong go second strategies. I mean, the most recent being Mech Knight. Like that truly was like the definition of go second. You just let your opponent do everything, set it down. That was all. I mean, you probably can attest to like further back strategies, something like Battle Ball Kaijus as a go second deck. There's so many.
Marju's a good one.
Marju.
Joe, have you ever played a go second deck, Joe?
I have.
Shadol is not a go second deck. Shut your mouth.
I mean, Cyber Dragon was played as a go second deck.
That's a really strong go second deck.
One thing I will say to kind of answer this question is there's actually a go second deck, I believe, that's tier 1 right now. And that's Sword Soul going second with 10 years. I mean, you could argue it might not be tier 1, but because I've seen online a bunch of profiles lately, which are just like purely like going second Sword Soul. And it just has a bunch of Broad Breakers, a bunch of Dark Ruler No Mores, things like that. And it also has Vishuda, which is a card that, just gets you a free bounce before normal summoning. And then you can just go straight into your Sword Soul players and you're playing the deck like normal. But it can just deal with most fields. It plays like it kind of reminds me of a Mech Knight deck, but instead of using Mech Knight cards, you're using Sword Soul cards because the engine size is roughly the same. So yeah, no, I think going second is very viable this format. I
it's
think
definitely good in Sword Soul. Like the way they can kind of special their incredible Ecclesia for free.
Yes.
And bait negates with that, and then they go, oh, that's fine, I had Moye anyway, and normal that. And just kind of continue baiting negates until you finally crumple and die to the Baron they're eventually summoning. You're right, it is a very good going second deck.
And not even Baron, like you can just summon a Baxia using your normal summon eventually and not bounce 2 cards. That's pretty strong.
That's true.
Like, and if you open with a Dark Ruler no more, you can just clear a field set up like without discarding anything. I know you can't kill that turn, and that's like where you could use droplets as well, or droplets, I suppose. But like you can just wipe their board and just set up your own Baron and Grandmaster. Like that's like a very viable thing this format, and I think we're going to see it a lot because people, and I'm sure you guys have heard, like hand traps are being a bit shunned at the moment, and like board breakers are in. So like it definitely is a bit of a go in second format.
It's funny in our like post crossout world, everyone's decided to cut hand traps, and it's like, well, why would I play crossout? I guess to negate Dark Ruler is one of its uses if everyone's main decking it. I think Mech Knights is also, in reference to Capano, pretty favored right now. I think Mech Knights are always at their worst when there's a lot of decks going around that either use the graveyard or employ a lot of back row. I mean, obviously they're happy with columns, but they can't really beat over back row the way they can with problem monsters. There aren't really a lot of decks right now that don't just put a bunch of monsters on the board and pass. So there's an interesting argument that Mech Knights could be tier 2 in the right hands with the right build right now. And Capano's definitely been demonstrating that by cleaning up every single regional or hobby that he plays with that deck. It's impressive.
And I think, because we've just seen the evolution of Go Second just do nothing but get stronger. Like, that's Go Second cards have just consistently gotten stronger. Like, you think of things like, obviously, Raigeki, incredible. Think of like Harpy Feather Duster, great. They were banned for so long. But then you move forward, things like, Forbidden Chalice, really strong. Then through history, you think of like, Evenly Matched was a ridiculous printing. Dark Ruler no more. Nibiru the Primal Being. Lightning Storm. Like, there's droplets. Like, there's so many incredible Go Second cards that, the list goes on. So, I just don't know where that'll, like, if it'll peak at some point, and maybe that's where decks start adjusting to the power of Go Second. I mean, we even saw it in strategies such as, like, Virtual World, where it was like, activate Dark Ruler, you would chain your trap, then chain VFD. So, like, decks started finding workarounds, which I think is where that strategy gets worse. Once people start finding the workaround, it gets worse.
But this is the balance of Go Second in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it's subjectively better to go first. But there are certain formats where decks or the main meta decks aren't very good at dealing with a particular card. And like I said with the Adamantipator Eldritch thing before the podcast, Eldritch you had to hand trap because they were just going to set 5, draw 5, pass. It didn't matter if you had a Dark Ruler at that point, you'd lost the game. Adamantipator, you couldn't hand trap them. You had to Dark Ruler their board or you lost the game. And that was an interesting scenario where, like, the reason those decks were so strong is because of each other. You couldn't easily play silver bullet cards to deal with both of them. Whereas now we're in a format where there's not a lot of decks that are setting 5, drawing 5, and passing. In fact, it's a lot of monster-based negation on board that, droplets and a Dark Ruler are very effective at taking down.
And that might also mean you'll probably see as the format evolves, like cards like Solemn Judgment picking up play, like cards that are going to deal with Judgment. Like you'll see it go in.
Also, I think that's
going to be a good card this format.
Underplayed right now. Yeah. Especially in decks like Fluanderies that like can end with 6 cards in hand, so you never have to worry about the restriction, because it's obviously a little annoying in back row decks. Also, you have to keep a card in your hand.
No, that deck has nothing to hide. There's nothing in that deck is unknown.
Yeah.
So
we got one last question here from a friend of the pod, has been on the pod, Dino Spazovsky, or Spazovsky, if you're Triff. And he writes, "Hey guys, long-time viewer, first-time mailer here. I'm wondering who from the NZ community you guys would love to have as a testing partner, due to reasons such as distance or laziness, or just not knowing them very well, to make first contact in the first place. XOXO Gossip Goat, Dino."
Gossip goat. I love that. When I think of like testing partners, I think of people who've seen a lot of competitive success in their Yu-Gi-Oh history and have done really well at international events, actually. I do think of one person that I would really love to test with more in person, and that's Ross Hitchens.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Ross
and I think
guy.
that Ross Hitchens has truly.
We're not. If you're fishing for compliments, you came to the wrong place.
The fish are dead. This is the lake's frozen over, babe.
I read this question because I love Dino. I don't actually know if I have an answer because I feel like I do test with the people that I want to test with the most.
I need to test more. That's my problem. I need
test
to probably
in general
remote dual test to like you guys and other people, like because
I'd love to test with you, Joe. It'd be awesome to be able to meet you and actually play some Yu-Gi-Oh.
Exactly. I mean, I'm just like, my own competitive Yu-Gi-Oh has taken a bit of a, I won't say a backstep, but it's like been put on the shelf a little bit, like because of how busy I've been with like running the Palmy scene. But I am going to be going to the sushi night event soon. So like I will be playing an event soon. So I do need to test. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think if there's anyone like that from Yu-Gi-Oh's like competitive history that I haven't met and played with, or because there's definitely some people that have moved on, maybe ex-Worlds competitors. Like it would definitely be interesting to play a game of Yu-Gi-Oh with Chris Gehring, but like I don't know if I would get much out of it at this point. He's kind of playing a different game now. So
I think I'd love to like more of the Christchurch crew. People like Michael Soper, people like Thomas Bailey. Like there's just so many people that are really strong players. And I mean like Wellington as well, Samuel John,
South Island champs,
even the Wellington players, people, I mean obviously we've all versed against G-Man, but I think like Shane Borum, he does really well. I know like Jack Bradley is up and coming in that strategy, in that environment as well.
I think the thing that I would like
next weekend.
Perfect. Cool. Knock.
Yeah. The thing that I would like more than just like an individual is to experience what you talked about, Joe, when there is like an international championship.
Yes.
If I were like up for the running of Worlds or like a favorable YCS, and like we had that moment where all of the good players kind of get together and help and test together and kind of like build lists, like that to me almost sounds more fun than just getting like a one-on-one session with a really good duelist, as valuable as that would be. I think I feed off that social.
Having lots of test partners is also really good because like you get to like pick up
need to
information
diversify.
from other people. Like some people just play the game different to you, like and like and they might be right, but like I don't know, I have a play style and like it's hard for me to deviate a little bit from that playstyle, I guess. Like, but I like to pick up little tips from multiple sources, I guess, and like get to pick up like little texts that people use, and like go, hey, I'll test it out myself if I don't like it, whatever, But I when I was playing competitively, I like to play against multiple people at multiple different levels as well. So yeah.
Yep, because you honestly be surprised at how many people that play like a quote unquote casual or rogue strategy, they know so much about their strategy. That you just is something you never approach because like I'm only going to face these tier 1 threats, and that's not generally the case at these larger scale events until you are at that kind of top end of the room, like the tables 1 through 20. Like you're not going to see a lot of that until you kind of fish through the rogue, essentially.
And I got to shout out Connor and Dino as like my main
testing
two non-Ruben testing partners. For keeping me on my toes and always being kind of like innovative in their own way. Like they're very themselves. Like Dino will always, at least one point during the testing session, play Shadol against me. Sorry, Joe, there's another rival for the Shadol master, but legitimately he just loves like all the value and kind of grindier mid-range decks of Yu-Gi-Oh's history, or all the most degenerate combo decks he can get his hands on, whichever is better. And then Connor always just putting the spice on Cheese TCG on Twitch.
Yeah, Cheese TCG on Twitch.
He's got the spice, buddy. He's always got the good shit.
He's cooking,
brewing up.
For someone who, I'm not gonna drag his personal business on, but
for someone who can't cook.
Someone who can't. I didn't say that. He knows how to add the spice. I'm so messy.
We're dragging the boy now. I was giving him so much praise, and you're like, and he can't do his laundry. Fuck you, Connor.
You're just airing it out. And I think I've got a question here, actually. This is from one of our listeners, Matt Wilson. He's got a really interesting question. I think is going to be a great topic for a future podcast. But I might like to I'd like to probably we can just give like a quick flash thought one off before we develop it further.
Before we get to the end of the pod.
He is just simply asking, with the history of January ban lists and the general quote unquote nuking that occurs, what do we think is going to be tier 1 post January ban list?
This is like a painful choice spoiler. We can't do this.
It's not a spoiler because it's just our personal opinions and that could change.
Digital bugs.
No, I think what you're going to see is the bow decks will survive.
Yeah.
The decks from before might not. Like that's the best prediction you can go with. Like just going by history. Yeah.
I can envision a sort of Brave Token DPE
Sword Soul,
small 10-year engine, Sword Soul, cross out, board breaker, go second deck being around for a while, which is frustrating because I thought we were done with engine.deck.
I'm going to put this out to here as the group. I think one of the 4 main decks that got reprinted in the 10s, so Tri-Brigade, Virtual World, Drytron, quote unquote, and Phantom Knights will survive. My question is to you two, which one do you think will survive?
VW. Easiest call of my life. No one plays it.
Yeah. Probably
no one's playing this deck.
Like, out of the ones that are least likely to survive, in my opinion, I think Phantom Knight could be on the chopping block again.
Anyway, we're spoiling the painful choice.
I think, so Virtual World.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to say, like, Drytron. I think they'll keep it around.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I think they'll keep it around. Well, that's our painful choice spoiler when we get to that one going
soon.
Just
got 2 podcasts in one. You should be paying us for this.
I know, little tidbit. But yeah, that's all. So that's deck building throughout history, deck building sets throughout history, past, not so much present, and future. Thank you very much to everyone who listened. I hope you've learned something about, how Konami likes to sell decks to us and the format in which we consume them.
If you want to learn how to do the full Ritual Beast combo from memory, you can hit up Joe on on his Twitter. He'll happily answer that question.
It might take a couple of working days.
I'll tell you how to do the musket combo if you message me.
And I can teach you how to Genlock.
Yeah, exactly.
So super easy, super fun. And I think that these are, really good examples of Konami's way to promote product. Some of them might be a bit of clunkers, but I think all in all, whenever we hear one of these announced, we're excited to see what they're pushing forward. And we are interested to see the strategies that develop. And we've seen some hits and we have seen some misses. So I look forward to seeing the next one.
These sets always inspire a creativity in the player base because they're always sold to us as like, this is a deck. Now, how can you break it? What can you put in it? Definitely for me as a labber and a brewer, Adamancipator was a absolute favorite of mine. Seeing the cards day one, labbing combos, realizing they're broken before a lot of people, and then kind of watching it blossom from there was very enjoyable. And you don't really get that from a core set because things are usually like kind of
secret rares.
Well, they're doled out. They're kind of like, here's half the deck, and once you've worked that out, we'll give you the real toys. So yeah, that's the pod.
That's deck building.
That's we do be building decks.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have enjoyed.
Yeah. And as always, I'm Lucas.
I'm Ruben.
And I'm Joe.
And you've been listening to The Face Downs.